speakers, and after their contribution, there'll be a Q&A session. So please put your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and we'll take them after the two presentations. Today, we're focusing on the repercussions for our industry of the conflict in the Middle East, which started at the end of February. Operations in the Middle East have been at the epicenter of this conflict. But beyond that, the industry is feeling the impact in a number of ways on passenger numbers, cancelled flights, merged flights, increased cost of flights, passengers choosing different destinations, consumer sentiment generally, and some customers choosing to stay at home. And beyond all that, of course, we are seeing basic supply chain issues across the industry. So I'm delighted to welcome today two people to shed light on the situation that we're all facing to some degree. Abdeslam Agzoul, President of the Middle East and Africa Duty Free Association, will be joining us. But first of all, I'm delighted to welcome our good friend Slava Chedler-Tonya, who is the Senior Director of Economic Policy and Airport Business at ACI World. He's going to share ACI's data on non-aeronautical revenues, passenger traffic trends, and ACI's travel demand forecast, which will then include ACI's assessment on the Middle East impact. So Slava, thank you for coming, and over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah, for the kind introduction and for having me today. And I appreciate this opportunity to participate, to address this distinguished group and share some ACI perspective. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world. And let me share my screen. All right. Can you see it? Okay, so I might assume that you can see my screen, right? So today I'm
No, we
pleased.
can't see it yet, I think. No.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for letting me know. Apologies for this.
Thank you, Slava.
And now, can you see it?
We can't see it yet. No, unfortunately not.
And now?
Now we can. Yes, thank you. If you switch into presentation mode.
Yeah, and now it's in presentation mode.
That's
correct?
fine. Thank you, Slava.
Yeah, very good. So today I'm pleased to present the state of the non-aeronautical business of airport, sharing key insights and global benchmark from the ACI KPI Economics Report 2026, covering fiscal data for 2024. We'll also examine the latest airport traffic trends for Q1 2026, of course, including the impact of recent disruptions in the Middle East. And finally, we conclude with ACI World updated medium and long-term traffic demand outlook. So to begin, it is always useful to remind ourselves of the important role that non-aeronautical revenues play in airport business performance. Airports are strategic assets and competitive businesses, generating their revenue primarily from two sources: aeronautical and non-aeronautical activities. In 2024, aeronautical activities remain the largest source of total airport revenues, accounting for 54%. At the same time, non-aeronautical revenues continue to play a vital role in airport financial sustainability, contributing 37% of total airport revenues. Looking across regions, we can see some significant differences. The highest share of non-aeronautical revenues was recorded in Asia Pacific and the Middle East, where it accounted for 44% of total airport revenues. At the other end of the spectrum, Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean reported non-aeronautical revenue share of 26 and 22% respectively, reflected less diversified and therefore more vulnerable or riskier revenue portfolios. Now let's turn to the role of non-aeronautical revenues in covering airport costs. The global benchmark showed that non-aeronautical revenues can offset approximately 48% of total airport costs. Regional variations are again evident. Asia Pacific and the Middle East recorded the highest ratio, with non-aeronautical revenues covering 55% of total airport costs, while Latin America and the Caribbean recorded the lowest at 36%. As we all know, non-aeronautical revenues are highly dependent on passenger traffic flows. So let's take a step back and look at the recovery of passenger traffic and airport revenues in 2024. In 2024, the global aviation sector finally reached and surpassed pre-pandemic passengers levels. Airports worldwide handled 9.4 billion passengers, exceeding 2019 volumes by 3.6%. However, an important question remains. Did airport revenue recovery keep pace with passenger traffic recovery? And this slide demonstrates that despite passenger traffic exceeding pre-pandemic levels, global airport revenues remained around 2% below 2019 levels. The regional picture is quite mixed. North America and Latin America outperformed their 2019 revenues by 14% and 9% respectively. In contrast, Asia Pacific and the Middle East remained 14% below pre-pandemic levels. Europe was down 5.5%, and Africa faced the largest gap at 24% below 2019 performance. Now let's take a closer look at non-aeronautical revenues. Here the recovery story is even more challenging. While passenger traffic has fully recovered, global non-aeronautical revenues in 2024 remain 9% below pre-pandemic levels. The regional picture is even more striking. North America was the only region to surpass its 2019 performance, with non-aeronautical revenues up 8%. All other regions remained below pre-pandemic levels. Asia Pacific and the Middle East were down 23%, Europe 6%, Latin America and the Caribbean 8%, while Africa recorded the largest gap at 32% below 2019 levels. Now let's shift our focus to non-aeronautical airport revenue per passenger, or what we often refer to as commercial yields. Here we can see that the global trend remains negative. Since 2017, non-aeronautical revenue per passenger has been declining at an average annual rate of 2.5%. In 2024, commercial yield remained 12% below 2019 levels at $7.57 per passenger. Regionally, North America was once again the exception, with non-aeronautical revenue per passenger exceeding 2019 levels by 2.6%. All other regions remained below pre-pandemic performance. Asia Pacific and the Middle East were down 20%, Europe 11%, Latin America and the Caribbean 30%, while Africa recorded the largest decline, with commercial yields still 45% below 2019 levels. And the key takeaway is that passenger volume has recovered, but airports are generating less non-aeronautical revenue per passenger than before the pandemic. Now let's take a look at where non-aeronautical revenues actually come from. Globally, parking and retail remain the two largest sources of non-aeronautical revenue, accounting for 24% and 23% of total non-aeronautical revenue respectively. Property and real estate contribute 16%, while food and beverage account for 6%. Looking at the regional picture, Retail remains a dominant commercial activity across all regions except North America, with Asia Pacific and the Middle East leading at 39% of non-aeronautical revenues. North America stands out with parking generating over 43% of non-aeronautical revenues, the highest share of any commercial activities across all regions. Latin America records the highest contribution from food and beverage at nearly 10%, while property and real estate play a particularly important role in Asia Pacific and the Middle East, accounting for almost 27% of revenues. So all these differences highlight that there is no single airport commercial model, and revenue drivers vary considerably across regions and markets. Having looked at the key sources of non-aeronautical revenues, let's now take a closer look at retail performance. While retail remains one of the most important commercial activities for airports globally, retail revenue per passenger has declined at an average annual rate of 4.3% since 2017, and in 2024 remained 21% below its 2019 level. The challenge is global in nature. All regions remain below their pre-pandemic retail revenue per passenger levels, with the largest declines recorded in Africa and Asia Pacific and the Middle East at 46% and 27% respectively. To better understand this structural shift, let me share a few insights from a recent ACI Asia Pacific and Middle East travel retail study presented at the Trinity Forum in Doha this February. The key takeaway from this study is simple. The challenge facing airport retail today is no longer recovery, but relevance. Passenger traffic has returned, but passenger behavior and spending patterns have changed. The study identifies 6 structural trends shaping the next phase of growth. First, while Chinese travelers remain important spenders, future growth will depend on more diversified mix of passengers. Second, generational shifts are accelerating. Gen Z travelers are experience-driven, digitally aware, and less responsive to traditional retail formats. Third, core duty-free categories remain important, but growth is increasingly driven by gifting, premiumization, and value-added propositions. Fourth, digital solutions are becoming more important, although their main role is to improve convenience and reduce friction, rather than directly increase spending. And finally, sustainability matters to passengers, but it's increasingly a license to operate rather than a standalone driver of commercial growth. So these structural trends are not only reshaping travel retail today, they will also influence the future trajectory of airport revenues. Based on these trends, passenger traffic projections, and historical trends in non-aeronautical revenue per passenger, we at ACI World have developed a global medium-term focus for airport revenues. And several important insights emerge from this analysis. First, airport revenue recovery continues to lag behind passenger traffic recovery. Passenger traffic returned to pre-pandemic levels in 2024, while total airport revenues and aeronautical revenues were expected to recover in 2025. At the same time, non-aeronautical revenues are projected to recover only by mid-2026 or even 2027. In other words, there is a lag of approximately 2.5 years between the recovery of passenger traffic and the recovery of non-aeronautical revenues. The second key insight is the medium-term revenue growth outlook. The global non-aero revenues are projected to increase from approximately $73 billion in 2024 to nearly $99 billion by 2033, representing an average annual growth rate of around 3%. At the same time, non-aeronautical revenues are expected to remain broadly stable at around 38% of total airport revenues, highlighting their continued importance as a core pillar of airport sustainability. So, while the recovery of commercial revenue has been slower than recovery in passenger traffic, the long-term outlook remains positive, supported by sustained traffic growth and continued evolution of airport commercial business models. Now let's turn our attention to global passenger traffic trends. In Q1 2026, airports worldwide welcomed approximately 2.2 billion passengers, exceeding both 2025 and 2019 levels by 2.8 and 6.4% respectively. When we break down global passenger traffic performance by region, we see divergent trends across markets. Most regions continued to grow in Q1 2026. Africa led the way with passenger traffic up 8.4% year-on-year, followed by Asia Pacific at 4.9%, Europe at 4.3%, as well as Latin America and the Caribbean at 4.3%, and North America recorded 0.5% growth. The notable exception, of course, was the Middle East, where passenger traffic declined by 13% compared with Q1 2025 due to ongoing geopolitical developments, airspace restrictions, and their negative impact on air connectivity and airline operations. And unfortunately, this does not appear to be a short-term disruption. To better understand the scale of this decline for airports and the broader aviation ecosystem, I would like to highlight a recent impact assessment conducted by our colleagues from ACI Asia Pacific and Middle East. The study examined the impact of the conflict across 9 major Middle Eastern airports between the 28th of February and the 30th of April 2026. The findings revealed severe disruptions to the region's aviation sector. Passenger traffic recorded a shortfall of 27 million passengers during March and April, representing a 54 year-on-year decline. The economic impact is estimated at between $900 million and $1 billion in lost revenues, equivalent to a 55% decline compared with budgeted targets. Scheduled flight operation fell to just 53% of planned levels, while cargo volumes declined by 620,000 metric tons, down 52% year-on-year. And in addition, approximately 97,000 connecting passengers per day were disrupted or rerouted, while airfares increased by around 50% compared with the previous year due to capacity constraints and airlines' commercial considerations. The impact of the conflict is not limited to traffic and airport revenues, of course. It is also affecting one of the aviation industry's largest cost items, jet fuel. Jet fuel prices have risen sharply in 2026, increasing from around $82 per barrel in December 2025 to approximately $170 per barrel in April 2026, creating additional cost pressures across the aviation sector. And this highlights that current challenges facing aviation are not only demand-related, but are also driven by supply side and geopolitical factors. Now let's take a look at ACI World's global medium-term passenger traffic outlook. At the beginning of this year, global passenger traffic was estimated to reach 10.2 billion passengers, representing growth of 3.9% over 2025. However, following recent geopolitical developments, airspace disruptions in the Middle East, and sharply rising airfares and fuel costs, we have revised our forecast downward. We now expect global passenger traffic to reach approximately 10 billion passengers in 2026, representing an annual growth rate of 2.7%. And the revision is concentrated primarily in the Middle East, where passenger traffic is now expected to decline by around 10.5% year on year, reflecting reduced connectivity, lower transfer volumes, and prolonged operational disruptions. That said, while geopolitical developments have weakened the near-term outlook, we do not currently assume a structural change in long-term traffic growth. Asia-Pacific, Europe, and North America are expected to remain the world's three largest aviation markets throughout the forecast period. And finally, looking further ahead, the long-term outlook for aviation remains very strong. According to the latest ACIA World long-term forecast, global passenger traffic is expected to double from 9.4 billion passengers in 2024 to approximately 90 billion by 2045, rising further to 23.2 billion by 2044, around 2.5 times the 2024 levels. And these projections highlight both the resilience of air transport and the significant opportunities ahead of our airports and our partners. At the same time, they reinforce the importance of investing in infrastructure, enhancing operational efficiency, and continuing to evolve airport commercial business models and non-aeronautical revenue streams. And in closing my presentation, if I could leave you with one key message today, it would be this. Despite geopolitical disruptions and changing consumer behavior, the long-term outlook for aviation remains strong and resilient. But airports and their partners must continue evolving their business models to accommodate and fully capture that growth. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention and hand it back to Sarah.
Thank you very much, Slava. I don't know about everybody else, but I've gone through a roller coaster of emotions from things looking quite good to things being terribly despairing. And then we end up at the end with saying that actually this year we're still going to be up globally on passenger traffic. So I guess we'll be exploring some of that through the questions that some of our participants will have. So stay with us, Slava. Thank you very much. And I'm going to hand over at this point to Abdeslam Agzoul, who, as I said before, is the president of MEDFA. He's also the CEO of Middle East and Africa for Avolta, and he lives and works in the region. So I'm sure that his insight is going to be really riveting. Thank you very much, Abdeslam.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody, for attending this webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm very honored to represent MEDFA at this webinar, and again, many thanks to you, Sarah, and to Duty Free World Council for their invitation to allow us to take part. I hardly need to say that the first half of this year has been an exceptionally challenging period for MEDFA members, and not only, I think, for all the people living in this region. As I began to put together my presentation last week, the conflict in the Gulf took a new and serious turn with the drones and missile strike on Kuwait International Airport. The incident caused significant disruption and was a painful reminder of the vulnerability of critical transport infrastructure. My own company, as you know, Avolta, is operating in Kuwait Airport for many years. Despite the disruption, operation resumed within hours, illustrating also the resilience of our industry and the dedication of the people who work tirelessly to keep essential services running. This incident reminds us that the conflict in the Gulf and in Lebanon is primarily a human tragedy. All of us at MEDFA extend our sympathy and support to those who are suffering, and we think especially of our colleagues in the travel retail industry who are affected. From a business point of view, the situation continues to be extremely volatile, and the recovery, even if it is sustained, it's still fragile, to say the least. During the most intense period of the current conflict, from February 28th through the ceasefire on the 8th of April, the main airport in the Middle East operated at an average close to 50% of scheduled flights before the conflict began. This is according to a study of 9 major airports done by ICI, Asia Pacific and Middle East. The same study indicates that these figures had recovered to close to 60% by the first week of April. And there has been a very gradual recovery since then, although traffic across the region remains well down on normal levels. ICI estimates the number of passengers lost in March and April, as you have seen in the presentation of Slava, across these main airports to be around 27 million. If you apply even a modest level of spend per pax to these figures, it is immediately clear that the loss of sales to our regional industry in dollar is measured in the hundreds of millions. To this, we must add the sales lost from transit travelers unable or unwilling to connect through the Middle East or deterred from traveling owing to the spike in airfares as a result of the conflict. As I prepared my presentation last week, the recent military incident in the Gulf has caused the closure of some hours of Kuwait airport and of Bahrain airspace. But also last week, the conflict has caused the closure or partial closure of the airspace in Syria and Iraq. However, in several major markets, the gradual recovery continues. As an example, air traffic in the UAE has fully resumed, and Emirates is serving approximately 96% of its usual global network at 75% of its pre-conflict capacity. Etihad, the other biggest airline in UAE, is serving 80 destinations worldwide. And FlyDubai, the low-cost carrier, is operating a full network, although with a reduced schedule. Qatar Airways, one of the biggest companies in the region and in the world, meanwhile, expect to serve 160 destinations by already next week. Regional connectivity is building back, but it is a concern to us that airlines outside the region have not yet reestablished their pre-conflict schedules. To give some example of companies like Air France, KLM, British Airways, Lufthansa, Swissair, have not yet lifted the suspension of flight to key destinations in the Gulf and in Lebanon. This makes it difficult to envisage an immediate V-shaped recovery, given that we will most likely be deprived of high-spending travelers for some time to come. In this context, the challenge for our region's industry are many and serious. To be clear, the decline in traffic is obviously a major issue, which is made worse by the changing demographics of those traveling. Unsurprisingly, the conflict has resulted in a very steep fall in tourist traffic to key destinations such as the UAE, Oman, Qatar, and Lebanon, as well as a decline in the business travel to Saudi Arabia. Last month, it was widely reported that hotel occupancy in Dubai was very far from normal levels for the period. The latest World Tourism Barometer published by the UN Tourism last month shows that arrivals in the Middle East fell by almost 14% in the first quarter of the year. And as you know, it is certain that the figures will be much worse in quarter two. Leisure traffic, as you know, is absolutely vital to travel retail in the region. Not just duty-free, but dining and specialist retail too. And the collapse of this sector cannot be compensated by the gradual recovery in business traffic. The rise in the cost of plane ticket will also have an inevitable impact on passenger demographic, not just in the Middle East, but across the world. In recent years, we have benefited from the increased accessibility of air traffic, especially in markets that are vital to us at MEDFA, such as India and the African continent. If airfare tickets continue to rise and air travel becomes once again available only to a privileged few, then overall sales will inevitably be impacted. I have described a very challenging context without even mentioning one of the biggest challenges of all of us, which is the disruption to our supply chain. As many of you attending this webinar will know, getting product from A to B has become extremely expensive, time-consuming, and sometimes close to impossible. I'm not a logistics specialist, but I know that my own colleagues, along with supply chain experts across MEDFA members, have worked tirelessly with their partner brands to find solutions. Given the unpredictability of the geopolitical situation, it is impossible to know what lasting effect the conflict will have on our regular supply chain. But it seems clear that all stakeholders, retailer, brand, and airport, we will need to show a high level of agility in our response to this crisis. None of us need to be reminded of the challenges we faced during the COVID pandemic, but there are lessons from that period that are very relevant to us in the Middle East today. Among these, the need for flexibility on all sides. The classic concession-based contract model, based on a blind minimum annual guarantee, can work well when traffic and sales are growing, but it is often inappropriate during time of crisis. Put simply, as a retailer, we cannot guarantee sales to passengers who are not there. I'm encouraged by the spirit of partnership that exists in our region between the stakeholders that make up our industry, landlords, retailer, and brand. Together, we need to show flexibility and agility today in order to fully benefit from the recovery tomorrow. This means recognizing the reality we currently face, adjusting our method accordingly, and ensuring that together we are ready for the rebuild. As we came to the end of a difficult first half of the year, I'm hopeful that the second half will see a recovery, but we expect that it will be gradual. Our role at MEDFA will be to provide support to our members as they navigate this difficult period, to encourage the exchange of information between business partners, and to remain vigilant and proactive with regard to the regulatory challenges that emerge across the Middle East and Africa region. In challenging time, communication has united us, not only as competitors, but as a partner, demonstrating a remarkable spirit of solidarity and shared responsibility for our industry. As the saying goes, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. Soon, registration will open for this year's MEDFA conference, which, as you may know, will take place in Morocco, in Rabat, in the month of November. I'm hopeful that by that time, the context for our industry in the Middle East will have stabilized. The conference will give us a timely opportunity to discuss the situation in a greater detail, share our experience, and develop solutions to safeguard our common interests. I would like to end this short presentation by saying a big thank you on behalf of MEDFA and its members to all our business partners who have supported us during this challenging period, which is not over yet, as you know. It is only through close cooperation based on mutual understanding that we can meet these challenges and ensure our business continue to thrive. We hear the word resilience a lot in our industry, as you know, but it is the Middle East region that perhaps most embodies that resilience. I have every confidence that we will emerge stronger from this crisis and will continue to set new standards for the travel retail. Thank you all for your kind attention, and I look forward to answering any question you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abdeslam. We have seen so much data and a wealth of insight also from both speakers. So that's been a great start to this session. It's now your turn as participants to put your questions, if you haven't already, in the chat box or the Q&A box. And I welcome Nicole Daniels from TFWA, who will take the questions through and put them to our speakers. Thank you, Nicole. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and a big thank you from me as well to both of our guest speakers here today, Slava, Abdeslam. There was some fascinating insights in there. If I could invite you both to switch on your cameras again and join us for the panel discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, to kick off the panel discussion today, I have a first question for Abdeslam. So, will this shock to the region's stability and security have a lasting impact on how duty-free and travel retail actors view the region? And is this likely to be reflected in commercial contracts?
What a difficult question. And thank you for raising this point that is very important. If I may start with a broader point, my view is quite clear. Commercial contracts in our industry are not driven or should not be driven by short-term reaction. There are strategic, long-term commitment. So from that perspective, I do not expect any major shift. The region still has very strong fundamentals. The number one, a unique geographic position. The second one, the central role in global tourism and business. Major investment in transport and aviation infrastructure, and importantly, long-term confidence from both investors and travelers. And linked to that, we should not forget one important lesson, I think, from COVID. This industry knows how to recover. COVID reminded the whole ecosystem of the value of long-term partnership, flexibility, and the further sharing of both opportunities and risk. It is also showed very clearly that in crisis, not part of the value chains can be left behind. So we need to work all together. No? Most importantly, it proved that this region has both the resilience and the capability to bounce back strongly. So no, I don't think that will have in the long term impact in the commercial contract.
Well, thank you for your encouraging words. Just a quick question now from a member of our audience, a question of clarification. You mentioned in your presentation you did an impact assessment across 9 major Middle East airports. Could you just specify which airports that was, Abdeslam?
Well, it's a data that, as I said in my presentation, came from ICI. We took it from a study from ICI's. I don't have the list, but I can say it's the big hubs, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait. So these are the example of the airport that are concerned by these 9 airports, as I said in the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Coming back now to you, Slava, and coming back to your slides on non-aeronautical revenue. Could you let us know what, so the reasons for why non-aeronautical revenue and non-aeronautical revenue per passenger are significantly below 2019 levels?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Nicole, for a question. And this a good one. So, and of course, there are multiple reasons for that, but I would like to highlight three major ones. The first, airports and their commercial partners, they face increasingly fierce competition from retail channels, including e-commerce platforms, omni-channel retailers, and downtown retail. Passenger became more tech savvy, and we can increasingly observe that passenger can research, compare, and purchase products before, during, and even after their journey, making it even more challenging for airports to capture retail spending. So second, passenger demographics and behaviors have changed significantly. The growing influence of Gen Z, millennials, and increasingly active boomers or older travelers is responding spending patterns. So these passengers segments have different expectation now. They are more experience driven, digitally connected, and often less responsive to traditional retail concepts. And finally, the third point is that airports and retailers face growing challenges in convergent passenger growth into commercial spending. What we increasingly observe is a so-called attention economy, in which airports and commercial partners, food and beverage operators, travel retailers, they compete not only for passenger wallets, but also for their time and attentions. That's all in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Slava. One of our participants, Anthony Budd, is, where are we? No. One of our participants was asking particularly about the significant drop on non-aeronautical revenues in Africa. Here, the non-aeronautical airport revenue in Africa is down by 32% and per passenger down by 45%, quite a significant drop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we observed that African region had the largest gap in terms of recovery to pre-pandemic levels. And there are, of course, multiple reasons for this as well, but the main reason and probably is like the way that airports are operate in this region. So mostly airports in Africa, they operate under single till model. There are different approaches towards accounting for non-aeronautical revenues. And once they operate under single till models, airport operators and airport, they have less incentive to invest in non-aeronautical revenues, because eventually all the revenues generated from travel retail, food and beverage, car parking, they are further directing to subsidize airlines in essence to reduce their airport charges. And all this in complex create wrong signals for investors, for travel retailers, and for airport operators. And that's why these airports are struggling in generating new revenue sources on non-aero side.
Thank you, Slava. Okay, now on to the question from Anthony Budd, who's one which is about logistics and safe shipping routes into the UAE. He's saying that these are extremely critical, and what is the situation with regarding secure supply chains into the Middle East region? Abdeslam, would you be able to answer that for us?
Sorry. Yes. I mean, if we have the solution for that, I mean, I can get a lot of incomes, from that. It's the big question, and also discussing with colleagues and members of MEDFA, it's probably after the drop in passenger is the second major issue that the operators, but also the vendors and suppliers are facing. I think that for the supply chain, I think we will continue to see more Now, what this crisis has provoked or has pushed the stakeholders to do is to look for alternatives or diversification in route and point of access, whether within the same transport mode or through alternative channels. Smaller and mid-sized ports are becoming much more important now. So now we heard about Horfakan Port, Fujairah, Jeddah, and other small airports that were not so famous, but due to the situation they became. And this is good because it shows also that the region, due to its capacity or capability to invest, has different alternatives that can overcome situations like this one. The second, rail and road will need to play a bigger role going forward. They have already started to do, and where maritime routes became more expensive or less reliable, air freight may increasingly become an efficient alternatives. And this is, again, I insist on the particularity of this region, that facing this problem has two things: the investment infrastructure, as I talked, but also a very strong airlines company that can cover also and cover this supply chain disruption, obviously at a cost, but at least you have a solution. And third, I believe that there will be also a stronger need to reduce the distance, but this is a more medium-long term solution, the distance between supply and the point of sales or distribution. In other words, supply chain will need to become shorter, closer, and more resilient. So this is how,
Okay.
in a short net, what
Okay.
I can say.
Thank you. Do you think these changes are likely to become embedded and be maintained after the conflict has subsided?
Well, some of them will continue. I think there is a big orientation now on the rail transport of passenger, but also on merchandise. There is a big project coming in the region, and there is also a big potential for that, okay, to have different point of access to the region. The air freight, definitely no, cannot compensate that, but it's always a solution that you can use in a situation of crisis. And to the proximity, it's a question probably to the vendors, to the distribution company, but it's something that worth to be studied.
Thank you very much. Slava, coming back to you now. One of your slides, you mentioned that a swoosh recovery is far more likely than a V-shaped one. Could you let us know what you mean by this type of recovery?
Oh, fantastic. That's a great question. Thank you for this. Yeah, we should have provided probably tutorial before introducing these terms, and of course. So in essence, V-shaped recovery means a rapid return to pre-conflict traffic levels once conditions stabilize, while swoosh recovery suggests a more gradual and progressive return over time. So,
okay.
And the likelihood of swoosh record is one of the key takeaways from the report released by our colleagues that we already mentioned, Asia Pacific and Middle East. And we at ACI World, we share this view. So, and in our understanding, the reason for that, like for this, let's call it swoosh or gradual recovery, is that even after conditions improve, airlines will need time to rebuild schedules and networks. Passenger will need to regain confidence, and of course, hub flows will need to be restored. So that's in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very clear. Following on from that, Slava, a question from Murad, who is asking you, which passenger segments do you expect to recover first? Leisure, business travel, or connecting traffic? And what evidence would support this assumption?
Yeah, that's a great question. As the other from the chat, amazing, so insightful. So the question. So with regards to traffic recover in different segments. What evidence, what our data show that, of course, leisure travelers and this segment is recovering first. And then what we observed that the business segment is shrinking over time. So from 2014 till 2023, we observed that the share of leisure passenger travelers is increasing from 23% to 19%, and leisure traffic is increasing from 77 to 83 respectively. And additionally, it is important to mention that, for instance, more and more it's more challenging to distinguish travelers, leisure travelers from business, because we all observe this leisure segment, right? When people combining both business and travel and leisure travel, so this becoming more blurred segment. And with regards to connecting passengers, of course, what we observe, for instance, when there is a disruption in the Middle East region, but at the same time, aviation sector is global, right? And the sector is resilient. So, and there are some regions like Asia Pacific and Africa, they benefit in this because of rerouting passengers. So, once again, to summarize it, the leisure travel comes first, and then the overall resilience of aviation sector remains very strong, and the growth is positive, around 3% for this year.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Coming back to you now, Abdeslam. Quite a general question here, and quite a few of our participants are asking this as well with regards to changes in passenger and shopping habits. So we are seeing a recovery in passenger numbers in the Middle East region. Have you seen any noticeable differences in the profile of shoppers, in their shopping habits? Are there any particular categories where buying behavior has changed? If you have any insights for our audience on that.
Thank you, Nicole, for the question, and thank for the participant also. I mean, definitely, we are talking now, we have a perspective of 3 months, more or less. So we can, everything that we will comment will be, we need to put it in that perspective, okay? What is a fact is that the first category to suffer is the tourist traffic, right? This is in many airports has dropped a lot, and obviously the behavior of tourists is very different from a frequent traveler or a family traveler. So this is obviously we notice that, and it's obviously has an impact in different aspects of the business. The business traveler are also dropping due to the restriction some companies are also imposing on cost, which is understandable. And the behavior also of the business traveler has changed, no? Because of the, I'm talking about shops, but also dining. So the people are, some categories are spending a little bit less than they used to do before the crisis. And there are also a category that was important in this region, is the young traveler that started, I mean, historically was not a category with weight here in the region, but in the last years we started to see an improvement. Now, obviously, with the air ticket price increase, it's a category also, and their habit also that is suffering. We see more travel for necessity, for obligations, people going back home, people visiting families for different matter, and less leisure, less also business traveler.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. A quick question now, Slava, for you about travel patterns. Do you think that there could be a shift in travel patterns away from the Middle East and Asia Pacific region, more towards Latin America?
Yeah, what we observe now that for instance, this passenger traffic were redirected primarily to Asia Pacific region and to Africa, as well as Latin American region also recorded like positive figures around 4.3%. So it showed that all those three regions, they are, let's say, benefiting from this temporarily closure of airspace, and these passenger traffic flows are like directly and indirectly reach these destinations.
Okay, so
I'm just going to interrupt while you think of your next question. Slava, you've put the airport codes of the airports that were covered by the Asia study. Would you mind putting them into everyone? Because it's just gone to the panelists and hosts for the moment. So
Oh, I see.
I think everybody would like to know the 9 airports. Thank you. Now back to you, Nicole, please. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've got time for one last question, and this is this question from our audience for you, Abdeslam. So in the spirit of never waste a good crisis, how would you like to come back even stronger than before in the Middle East airports, and how we as manufacturers can help?
Well, I think the word here is the partnership, and not only the partnership, but a long-term partnership, between the key stakeholders of this ecosystem. So
you mentioned, yes, you did mention in your airport the importance of partnership between landlords, retailers, and brands. Indeed,
absolutely, and I'm sorry for the redundancy. I will re-insist on that because it's key in our understanding in MEDFA that the partnership and the collaboration is key to overcome crisis, to generate opportunity, and to increase the added value in the medium and long term. There is much more focus now on, and this is, I think, is with the satisfaction that we can say that there is much more focus now on joint commercially activities, shared promotions, and above all, customer engagement. I think the customer satisfaction or the customer focus is becoming the common ground on which stronger partnership between these three stakeholders, I mean, for not saying others like airlines, but just the more directly impacted or by this business, is the customer satisfaction is becoming the common ground on which stronger partnerships are being built. And these I invite the people to come to the region. I mean, it's safe, even if when you read or you see the news, you may see something that is scary, but the reality is that, and I'm talking on behalf and under the control of the colleagues or the participants that are living here in the region. So you go to supermarket, you find product, but also in the airport, when you go to the airport, you see that the business is running on a normal way. You find your product, promotion, activations, smiley people for the brand or the salesperson. So, and this is a result of the partnership that I was saying. So I know from colleagues and from discussion that there was this collaboration. So the brands wanted to support, also the retailers supported the brand, and the airport in some extent. Also, every airport has its own strategy, but the common word was there was at least an understanding, discussion, and in many cases, actions and support.
Okay, well, thank you very much for these final words. We're going to have to stop there, unfortunately, because we have run out of time. So I'd like to say a big thank you on our behalf very much, Slava and Abdeslam, for your great participation today and fascinating insights. I'd also like to pass on the many, many messages of thanks from our audience to both of you. Everybody's found this session very, very interesting. So Thank you very much. I'd like to now pass back to Sarah for a few final words.
Yeah, I can only echo Nicole's comments. Not only did Slava and Abdeslam bring a lot of data, but the insight that they added during their presentations and the way they've candidly answered the questions of so many of you in the audience was amazing. Thank you so much. And for that reason, we will be distributing the presentations in the next 12 hours, hopefully, not even 24. The recording will take a little bit longer, but I think the recording is valuable because it incorporates all those extra comments that we've had today. So it remains to me to thank Nicole, in fact, for moderating as well, to TFWA for giving us the platform to do this. But again, to Slava, we have a long relationship at Duty Free World Council with ACI World, and in fact with all the regions, but it is very productive and mutual, and we very much appreciated your participation today. And Abdeslam, well, Medfa's a member of Duty Free World Council, and I think that you've really well illustrated today the value of the regional associations that we have within Duty Free World Council. So thank you to all of you for attending, and we'll see you all again soon, hopefully. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you
so much. Goodbye.